sit, enjoy the shade.
Hey, brother, pour the wine.
Drink the drink that I have made.
Hey, brother, pour the wine.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Drink in the Style, brought to you by Habitation Design, as well as the District Edina. I'm your host, Gregory Rich. I'm going to help you kill maybe Saturday or Sunday, or frankly, it could be like 3 a.m. and you're listening on a pod. Either way, I'm going to help you kill some time. My guest this evening is none other than a return visit from Sarah Davis, designer at Urban Works Architecture.
Hi there.
Welcome back, Sarah. How have you been?
I've been very, very well.
Have you?
Very busy.
It has. Last time, just so folks know, last time that Sarah was on the show was literally the last show that we recorded before we shut down for COVID.
Yes.
In fact, if the truth be known, Sarah and my good friend Michelle Asplund were the two people I had to make the call of shame to, which is absolutely terrible. I had to call because I came down with COVID. I was diagnosed literally the day after the show, and I had to call you up with, like, so much embarrassment and shame. I mean, it was... Never had to call anyone to tell them I had an STD, but I felt that I now know exactly what it must feel like.
Well, and it was early on, so it was kind of the mystery of what the symptoms would and how you would feel and whether we were going to get it too. It was definitely the dark ages of COVID.
It was the darkest. It was November of 2020, because I remember, because I wound up over Thanksgiving being completely quarantined for 14, 15 days in my bedroom, which, aside from being sick, were 14 or 15 of the best days of my life. No offense, but it was so sweet. My daughter would bring up, full meals that, my wife had prepared. She'd leave them outside the door and knock and then run like hell so that she didn't get sick. And I'd open up and she'd occasionally be like a little flower, or every now and then there'd be like a Manhattan included.
Wow.
And to show you how awesome my wife is and how much she looks after me, well, she would send up the occasional cocktail. No matter how much I begged, she wouldn't send up full bottles of liquor. She knew 14 days of me alone and a few bottles of liquor would be the very end.
Yep. Well, we were happy you survived.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm happy you did. You never got COVID, at least not from me.
I didn't. I guess that sheet of plexiglass saved us.
It was the COVID plexiglass, which is still there. Well done, Johnson. Anyway, yes. So, and obviously you weren't too angry because you did come back. So welcome.
I was happy to.
We're also joined, just as a general color commentator, if we may, with Carl Peltier, none other. Carl, you haven't been on the show for a little bit. How are you doing?
Yeah, it has been a while. I'm doing good. Yeah.
Yeah? And you've survived? You're enjoying the whole winter season? Nothing?
No, not at all. But
yeah, I know you hate it.
I hate it so much. I'm sitting here with a scarf on, if that tells you anything.
He is. Also, he looks at me with absolute hatred because I make him listen to Christmas music for the entire season. If I don't show up next week, it's because Carl killed me and my body somewhere. I'm glad you're on.
Me too. Thank you.
We have a new individual sitting in the Newkirk Coctological Memorial Chair, as we like to call it. We have none other than Hadley from Farmer's Kitchen and Bar. Hadley, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Are you excited?
Absolutely.
Farmers, talk a little bit about Farmer's Kitchen and Bar, because we haven't had anybody from Farmers on yet.
Well, we've been around for about a year. We're in the space right next to the Guthrie Theater, so it's a very popular place to stop by before and sometimes after those shows. We're like 1 block away from Washington, a little closer to the river, that Mill Ruins District area. So we're owned by the Farmers Union. Big part of what we do is sourcing everything locally, the very best we can. That transfers all the way through our bar program. So we use Minnesota distilleries, Minnesota breweries, Minnesota wineries, best we can. There's not a whole lot of them.
You're so lucky I'm not expanding on that.
Yeah. Well,
good effort on the Minnesota wineries.
Some of those, they get their grapes from elsewhere. So, we take liberties to provide a good experience where we can.
Well, Farmers is fantastic. And again, that kind of locally derived produce and alcohol. And of course, you guys have catered a number of events at the district Edina, which is awesome. You guys always do an amazing job.
The food is great.
Great food.
Really, unquestionably.
Really
so we're happy to have you on, and I'm excited to see what cocktail you are creating. So, Hadley McGrath, tell us what we're drinking. So
I picked the classic Sazerac. It's one of my favorite kind of vintage cocktails. Dates back to mid-18th century New Orleans. It was kind of, the posh drink at the time. In
one of the original cocktails.
Clubs. Yep, mm-hmm. Absolutely. Down to the bitters. It's a very simple cocktail. Bitters, syrup, a little bit of a rinse with absinthe, and then the bitters they use are actually the family was a New Orleans family. It's a Creole bitters, Peychaud's. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where that came from, and I think that's probably where it maintained its traction was through the popularity of that drink. So
Creole bitters, though.
Creole bitters.
How does that differ from your typical Angostura bitters?
Well, bitters could be pretty much anything. So Angostura is kind of its own variety and mixes of different, herbs and things. Creole bitters are going to be, Creole is your mixture of French and African American kind of Caribbean sort of cooking styles. So there's a lot of, it is pretty anise heavy. So that's kind of part of those just mild tastes that you like to get with the Sazerac. Which I'm a big fan of, and then you also use the absinthe, which is pretty heavy in that flavor too. So just kind of a touch on your good whiskey or good cognac, whatever you prefer to do, to not totally destroy the flavor of a good alcohol, because we hate doing that.
Agreed 100%. Anybody will tell you I get pissed off when you can't taste the actual liquor.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing I hate more than hiding it behind sugar.
Exactly.
So you've got, I do want to know, though, the absinthe. Tell me about the level of authenticity in this absinthe. Specifically, is there wormwood or is there not? So
there's actually some misnomers behind the whole absinthe thing. Wormwood is actually not what caused it to be illegal. It's a very high-proof liqueur. Mm-hmm. And it became illegal because people were just drinking too much and being absurdly drunk on the streets. So they blamed it on the alcohol, as people like to do.
On the Green Fairy in particular.
On the Green Fairy. And they took it off the shelves, and then everybody found their alternatives, their herb saints. You got anisette and ouzo and
so you're saying that wormwood has no hallucinogenic value?
It's...
Because I've been licking trees for a long time.
Minimally toxic. In fact, if you were to, you would probably pass out from alcohol poison before you'd start to feel any wormwood effects.
Really?
Yep.
So the Green Fairy is a myth?
Well, just in that you're just getting intoxicated with liquor.
Yeah, that works.
And it's a fabulous drink. I love absinthe in the proper way that it's done. So.
Carter Averbeck, who's been a guest on the show a number of times, the first drink that he requested was Death in the Afternoon. Are you familiar with it?
I'm unfamiliar with that.
It's absinthe and champagne or sparkling wine. So the carbonation gets the absinthe into your system even faster. It is an appropriately named drink.
Nice.
All right.
Sounds delicious.
Well, Johnson, why don't you hit us up with some of your mixing music? Hadley, tell us how to make the Sazerac.
So we're going to start off with the Peychaud's bitters. I brought a couple different here because we actually use the Creole bitters at the restaurant, but I'm going to stick with our standard here. It's kind of preference on the bitters. I'm going to make 2 at a time here, so I'm going to double it. I like to do about 3 dashes, so we'll do 6. And then it's going to be 2 ounces of rye, and we're actually using our Tattersall Farmer's Kitchen collab. We had them make a barrel for us, so we are using that in a lot of our cocktails. So
really?
I'd grab some. Yeah.
It's labeled. I can see it. You can't buy it though at Farmer's Kitchen.
No,
it's reserved just for
unfortunately, it's reserved just for us.
What barrel?
You're more than welcome to drink it in all of our cocktails. I know our Old Fashioned and our Manhattan at the restaurants. use this specifically.
Which is fabulous. Do you have a Sazerac on the menu?
We don't, but our bartenders are well aware of how to make classic cocktails like that, so we can make them. It's not officially on there, but I think since it's so well known, it's not something that we need to tweak or adjust on there. So
I would expect so, and it may be worth going in to Farmers and saying, I shall have a drinkless style Sazerac.
Nice.
And if you do that, I'll send you a gift card for an ottoman. No, really. But I will say
Why
thank
is an
you.
ottoman always your go-to?
I don't know. I love the word ottoman. It's like it's two things I've
Is it a
just
history thing?
arbitrarily. It probably is. The Ottoman
Empire.
Empire was a big player in my historical training. Yeah. All right, so you've got 3 dashes of the bitters.
And then 1/8 of an ounce. So most people don't have 1/8 of an ounce, even in their jiggers, so I use 3/4 of a teaspoon, which is the same thing. Some people
I
like...
was told there would be no math.
Yeah. Well, we're making drinks. There's always a little bit of math.
That's a good point. All right, so you got that in?
So, some people like it a little bit sweeter, but I'm thinking we're all on the same page and staying away from the sweet cocktails.
Yes, we are. Sarah, are you a sweet cocktail gal?
I'm usually at maybe one sweet, and that's the limit. So if it's like, maybe it's kind of lowbrow to admit that I do like a good Wisconsin Supper Club style old-fashioned once in a while.
I'm sorry, a good what?
A good Wisconsin Supper Club style. But that's usually on the sweet, but it's usually a limited one.
And occasionally includes Windsor, I believe.
Right, I think you're right.
By the way, the Supper Club, I just have to say, I'm sad to see Supper Clubs disappearing. Because when we first moved to Minnesota, I loved Supper Clubs.
There's a new one that just opened in St. Paul.
Yeah.
But are they authentic? Well, I'm going to go check it out.
My friend said it was super supper clubby.
Which
Really?
Is it Mr. Paul's? Or whatever?
No, that's in the diner.
No.
It's we'll look it up, but it's a tiki
I heard about
theme.
it too.
It's heavily like retro tiki theme.
Really? All right, we should do that. Carl, we got our spot for the Habitation holiday
our
party,
Christmas
perhaps.
party is? Okay. All right.
It's going to be a long drive to the saloon, but we'll see.
And then
All right.
Yeah, there's a few more kind of opening around town, like Creekside. But if anywhere I have to buy my own gherkin tray, I don't know. I think
That's the line for you?
That's the line for me.
I cut it off at gherkins.
I don't pay for my gherkins.
I like to use gherkins as people will say they're in a pickle. If it's a small problem, you're not in a pickle. You're in a gherkin.
You're in a gherkin.
You're in a gherkin. All right. Are you about to? So you have now added the ratios to the Yari, if you will, and now you're going to.
So now I have a little atomizer here filled with the absinthe. A lot of people will just pour the smallest amount of absinthe, rinse it around, and then pour it out. This makes it a little bit easier. You want to do that right before you pour it, otherwise
So you're
all evaporates it out.
atomizing. You're atomizing the
Absinthe.
absinthe. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Do
It's
a little dab behind the ear.
Right?
Yeah,
Oh
sure.
God, I actually do like that. That would definitely attract the right kind of woman.
So this one goes straight into the glass. No ice in it.
And then you're using a potato peeler.
It's just a peeler. We don't need to.
It could
No
be
need
used
for
as a
labels.
standard potato
No need
peeler.
for
I don't want to
labels.
I don't want to be disrespectful to your peeler. I mean, it's a fine peeler.
It is a fine peeler.
He actually looks offended.
It's
figured
very
out.
sharp. It's a Y peeler, if you will, specifically.
Okay,
We
a
all
Y
like our
peeler.
tools here, right?
I understand completely. Forgive me, Hadley.
It's okay.
It's a potato peeler.
Now, what are we doing with the matches?
Yes, now.
Well, I mean, there's a couple ways to go about this. Some people just express the orange peel garnish directly into it. Sometimes it's nice to get a little extra smoke onto it.
So, heating up the orange peel. Isn't that fascinating the way it flares? Like, if you're doing it right and you're actually getting an expression, it should have a little spark when you throw it over the...
Sure.
right?
Oils are flammable.
Witchcraft. It is witchcraft.
Cocktail sorcery.
Everybody likes a little bit of spark in the presentation.
Amen. Amen. And then we're going to be drinking this neat.
Neat is the way to go.
Always with the Sazerac, and is it generally in the rocks glass, or often, I mean, I've seen it up.
Funny you say that. I think the
truck.
original production of it was in a...
Martini glass, or coupe.
Well, I actually looked into it a little bit. It's a cockatoo, which is like an egg cup.
Really?
Some people were saying that was the mispronunciation that turned into cocktail.
Really?
French word, right? So we
Cockatoo.
mispronounce everything.
So a cockatoo is an egg cup.
Yeah.
And people decided to put a Sazerac in it, yielding potentially. Again, it's really like an adult Sesame Street. It is so educational. That's how I like to describe the show. You learn so much on drinking this stuff.
It's true.
Maybe adults just figured out that booze is more fun than eggs.
Amen. Well said. Well said.
I mean, we started putting booze in buckets and calling them punch bowls, right? it's all the same.
Well, I've talked many times about the history of the 750 milliliter wine bottle became commonplace and standardized in the 18th and early 19th century, essentially as a single serving. It was the original juice box.
Really?
Yes, so 750 milliliters, 150, 200 years ago, would have been considered what you sit down and have dinner with, or even lunch.
So we're not supposed to share our wine with
No,
a
never
significant other that's not...
Nope.
No?
She can have her own damn wine.
Get your own damn bottle.
Once again, I'm so glad my wife doesn't listen to the show. I saved me so many problems. But, okay, so we have the cocktail prepared for two. Sarah, you and I are going to give it a quick try.
We're going to...
And, Johnson, you ready with the swallowing music? Here we go. It's such a good drink. It's such a good drink.
That's a good drink. You don't
Right?
need clanking ice cubes or giant orb of fancy ice in there. It's just very nice.
Agreed. So, how would you just say not too sweet? If you go in, you want to order a Sazerac, but you don't want to have sugar water, how would a bartender express
I
that?
feel like depending on what type of drink you're ordering, they're going to kind of cater to the sweetness. If you're like, I need a margarita, they're probably going to hook it up with some sugar. But if you're ordering an old-fashioned and you just want it as is, or a Sazerac is not typically a sweet drink. I don't know where you've been where they're...
I haven't had a Sazerac in a long time,
There
but
you go.
my recollection was that it had a certain amount of sweetness to it. But it didn't, so we'll just go and I'll be sure to
I
ask
think
for...
we've had our ebbs and flows of preferences in cocktails.
Sure.
Used to be really sweet, used to be really dry. Kind of goes back and forth.
Amen. And nowadays, it's basically sugar water with something to get you drunk as quickly as you possibly
There you go.
can, which breaks my heart, but not for my listeners.
You're not
Well,
into
Hadley,
Red
that
Bulls
is
and vodka? That's
Pardon?
not Red Bull and vodka is not your cup
way
of
too
tea?
old for that. That said, we do at 3:30 generally do, Carl, our
Whiskey espresso shot?
our whiskey espresso shot,
I just leave out the espresso, though.
which is why you worked for me
I
for
want to
8
come work
years.
with you guys.
No, it's fabulous. It's a great 3:30 pickup. You just do a quick shot of espresso, quick shot of whiskey, 50-50, slam it. It'll get you to 5, 6 o'clock whenever your workday ends with a smile. You're
And
welcome.
productivity or not so much productivity?
Well, as I've often said, I'm an insanely high productivity alcoholic. So I really pick it up right afterwards. The rest of you people have your own problems to deal with.
I think that sounds like I'm not quite sure how that will go over in my office, but I'm always willing to give it a try.
Yes.
Try it. Let me know how it goes from your next job. All right. Well, Hadley, this is a great Sazerac. Sweet, not sweet. This one isn't bad at all. And it is absolutely delicious. So thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a beautiful color, and there's enough sweetness to kind of just tone down the heat a little bit, the burn. It's like it's very smooth.
Yeah. Agreed completely. It's somehow the expression and the orange seems to balance it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sarah, you may want to speak at some point during the show.
I'm happy with my cocktail.
Just sit quietly while I ramble in the
Yeah.
corner. I can live with that. Tell us about Urban Works. Again, you've been on the show, but run through it again.
Well, Urban Works focuses mainly on multi-family housing. So although we do residential, it's on a large scale. All those buildings that are going up, it seems like on every corner. We're part to blame for that. But,
but you make them pretty.
Yeah, we were lucky, especially going into the pandemic, that, people still need places to live. And whereas people had, massive layoffs and, having trouble with, especially those in the hospitality market, restaurant market, corporate market, we were, the cogs were still already turning, projects were already going, and we were busy right through the pandemic. So, I kind of always joked that you'd see the news stories about people, trying yoga classes and baking sourdough bread and all these things. And as I'm like chained to my desk in my basement next to my furnace, it's like, I want to bake some bread. But there was no bread baking for us. But we basically were able to kind of just float through that fairly successfully.
Which is great to hear. And now, as we've come out on the other side, the building boom continues, correct?
The building boom continues. And it's continuing in different places. I mean, the whole work where you live where you work model has kind of been shattered. I mean, now with the remote hybrid workplace, you don't need to live in close proximity to your office if you have an office at all. And so where everything used to be concentrated, very central, located to downtown, first-tier suburbs, we're doing a lot of progress in further out suburbs like Lake Elmo, Victoria, Rosemount. I mean, those are places that weren't necessarily top of mind pre-pandemic. I think that the developers have decided, well, people just can live anywhere and work from anywhere. And so you're going to be able to see some of that higher density moving a little farther out and creating kind of their own little downtown. So where the development starts, you might get a more modern Main Street of development to support all those people who are living a little farther out. So we're going to have a little different, instead of just the urban or suburban sprawl of single-family homes, there will be kind of clusters of density in different areas.
I have been noticing a lot of multifamily housing going up in places that you would never see 10, 20, 30 years ago.
No, right.
So when you're doing those types of development, so people tend to live further out because they want their yard or their space and things like that. How are you compensating for that? Are you finding that there's more common space that's needed, or is it simply a matter of people still want to be aggregated?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little bit full circle. When I first started working in multifamily, almost every apartment unit had like a little built-in desk. And, a little laminate desk that kind of extended off the kitchen. Yep. And as we went into the 2010s, they all just got smaller and smaller. The desks went away. The units got, basically embellished dorm rooms. I mean, 500 square feet, 400 square feet. We started calling them micros, and they were leasing up. I mean, full buildings of tiny little micro units.
I remember, Carl, you and I were very involved in doing a couple, right?
Yeah, we worked on Platform.
Right.
Together, right. And that was that tiny little micro unit.
Tiny little micro units.
We were able to fit a lot in there, but it takes a certain type of person to be able to live in one of those spaces.
And the accommodation would be, of course, extended living spaces in the amenities. So that continues to be a trend, but even with those extended living spaces and the amenities, lounges and community kitchens, if people are working in their spaces, they want a little bit more elbow room. And those funny little desks, they're kind of coming back.
I know.
And people want pets. They want pets in their lives because they don't have to commute every day.
Yeah.
And so room for just a little bit, those micros are now turning into the 1+ dens, and the people who had the 1+ dens now want the 2 bedrooms. Everyone wants to just have a little bit more grace in their life.
Because if you're home, you have to have some wandering around. Now, so my nephew lives in New York City with his fiancée, and there's been a huge shift to work from home, even in New York City. But New York apartments are tiny.
Yes.
Absolutely tiny. So you need to have some forethought on the space and how you're going to use it. Mm-hmm. And you're integrating that even in the more distant, larger units. Are the units, like, outside of the downtown area generally much larger?
It kind of depends a little bit on the demographic that they think they're going to appeal to. But they definitely are a little bit larger. I mean, obviously, any developer is going to want to get the best return on their investment and utilize every square foot to its fullest and try to get as many folks they can kind of share that space. But, you know, there's going to be a lot more people who want the one bedroom for themselves and the other bedroom for their office. And also, too, just now, if they're going to stay at home, those outdoor amenities used to just be for outdoor lounging. Well, now they're for working too. And so to make sure that everybody has some shade to hide their, you know, to kind of keep their laptops cool and have all the kind of electrical and data plugins that they have, you know, might want right there at their fingertips, even outside. Because if you remember, for a long time, I mean, before we had vaccinations too, people just liked that outdoor space to gather.
I lived on my
work.
deck for that spring, summer, fall of COVID.
Right. And obviously our seasons are short here, but if you can extend that safe way to gather as a group or to work, just extending that work-live type of experience into the outdoors, that's been very popular as well.
Yeah, that's actually brilliant. I hadn't thought at all about that. But you're right. People do want to be outside and still need to be checking in with work from time to time.
Hey, I was on my laptop outside on my deck. Thank you.
Once again, if only we were on TV and you could see Carl's look when I wasn't slamming you, I swear. But what about, so you're seeing an expansion, kind of diaspora of multifamily housing that's being built. What about within the city of Minneapolis?
Well, we were just downtown in kind of the city center fairly recently to meet with people for lunch, and we decided to walk along the street. It was a nice day, and it was still a little unsettling. There's just not the critical mass that you're accustomed to, that energy, the bustle. The folks that were there were just kind of hanging out, just, you know, and there were just a few. And so that vibrancy is still missing in that, you know, central business district. We happen to work in the North Loop, and North Loop, on the other hand, is thriving. Right, so it's in pockets. I never thought for a million years I would see baby carriages being strolled down Washington Avenue. Because I lived there post-grad in the 90s in that area, and there was nothing except for maybe bunkers and cuzzies, and that was, and
a couple strip clubs.
Right, exactly. And now it's like, people are having kids in this neighborhood. It's amazing to me, and just
it's
the
my
amount
weird
of
generation.
Yeah, it's the amazing of people walking dogs, and I would say out of the dog walkers, you know, 8 out of 10 are like women. So obviously, it's a neighborhood that people feel safe living in, and so you will see. It's just pockets, but those pockets are shifting a little bit. But unfortunately, right now, the center of downtown is still struggling.
Completely dead. And, of course, we don't even need to talk about Uptown, which is such a terrible shame. Frankly, I think Uptown, if it's going to be resurrected, and eventually it will, I think it should go with multifamily housing rather than a retail focus. I mean,
I think is it nostalgia that we want retail focus? I mean, we just, you know, do we want the Uptown that we knew and loved, but now we just can't really have anymore? It's just never the same.
I've always been super irritated with the accessibility of Uptown in the retail. It's either the parking is ridiculous.
And getting worse because the city has removed street parking.
Yep. I don't know. I don't know what is going to happen with Uptown, but
I don't know. I was sitting down there. I was down at Stella's Cafe, the late Stella's Cafe, which of course closed down. Great spot. It's a shame, without a doubt, but it's one mouse and suddenly you're terrible.
Is that what happened?
Yeah. Should I not? Yeah. No, somebody.
That wasn't all of it.
Yeah, that
Well, I mean, it was.
that's a
It
little
was.
more
It
than one
was.
mouse.
Yeah.
But
Everything uptown is closing because no one will
Yep.
go down there in general, which I don't quite understand because I mean it seems fine to me, but yeah, New York experience, I suppose. But yeah, there was a terrible fiasco where apparently a rat.
A rat.
oh yeah.
They're rats. They're everywhere.
Yeah,
and
but-
there was one that got into the front window, and somebody took a picture of it.
no.
End of story. Which is a shame
Damn
because they were a
smartphones.
fabulous place, insanely good food, etc. But so I'm down there having a drink before they go out of business, and I'm looking up and down and thinking these are like perfect brownstones potentially. And you could completely and totally revitalize this into kind of a mini warehouse type of a space. Am I off? Am I wrong? You're the expert. You come from a family of architects and designers.
Well, there is a lot of discussion right now about converting all these empty office buildings into housing. People don't need the office space, but they still need places to live.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the jury is a little out on one of those, if those numbers really work. There's certainly challenges with converting office space into housing. They can be really deep floor plates, so you don't have natural light reaching the back ends of your apartment unit and things like that.
Going back
But
into a tenement situation.
Right, exactly. But there is a lot of creative thought going into how to reuse these existing buildings into spaces that people need more than, if they don't need office space, if you don't need the retail, how do we get that converted? But
Indeed.
it
Of
usually
course-
happens with tax credits, which is kind of hard to do.
I'm amazed at actually how many multifamily buildings are still going up. It doesn't compute with me that many people
How many people? Yeah.
are renting at those prices.
Is there a glut at the high end? There does seem to be everybody rushing towards the top. I mean, Expo penthouses are what, $12,000?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think that there's, certainly a market of people who want to live the good life in the sense that they want the space, they want everything outfitted. They would have a normal home, but they don't want to take care of the lawn. They don't want to deal with all that, or maybe they want a snowbird and turn the door and lock it and fly away to a sunny
That's
clime
what
for the winter.
we did a penthouse model unit at Expo, and she said majority of her tenants that are renting are only there 3 months out of the year.
And it may not be their only
Yep.
property.
Yep.
Right? They
It's
probably
the-
have
yep.
it all over the place. And
Yep.
maybe this one happens to be close to the grandkids.
Yeah.
And they only come for a little while. Obviously, that's not all instances. But I think even as a designer, I'm still surprised at, comparing my mortgage to the rent that some are willing
Exactly.
to spend without having the equity, in return.
Precisely. And especially as we're coming out of the era of insanely, absurdly low interest rates, it's very hard to match a rent against, if for no reason other than a commercial, loan is going to adjust every 5 years. So every 5 years, those apartments are going to get more expensive as things continue, whereas people who've locked in on a condo or a house are generally going to become more competitive. But of course, those days are gone, so it doesn't matter, does it?
No, yeah. I think you're right.
There's also a lot to be said for being, again, so what do you think about this? We've been talking about office, people not going into the office and being at home. We're still humans. We still are pack critters, unquestionably. Do you think there's a move towards multifamily to replace the office so that you do have that kind of interaction, even if it's not 9 to 5 and people that you may or may not have anything in common with?
Well, it's a good point. One thing that was really difficult for me to live from or work from home was to not have that social interaction. I know that there are people who thrive in productivity, by themselves, but I feel
I'm not
that
one.
it was not working out. As soon as we, quote unquote, opened the office, I was right back there commuting every day. But
Yeah.
I kind of thrive on that social outlet. But I think that, I've never really lived in a high-density building myself.
Well,
There's
it's-
no hiding if you get in a bad interaction with them.
Yeah,
They know
there's.
where you live.
I mean, other than
Yeah.
True.
shutting your door, that's your privacy. As soon as you walk out, go get your mail. You're going to be seen. Go take out your trash. You're going to be seen. Like, you might have to talk to somebody. Like, I don't know. And I lived in a very small 5-unit building in St. Paul for 7 years, and that was even too
Even
much.
5 units.
Even 5 units. Yep.
That's a level, though, of closeness, like a 5-unit building. At least if you're in, like, a large multi-family type of thing, you've got tons of people you don't know who are just random strangers.
Oh, yeah.
That you can simply say hello to and feel like, It's like walking on your way to the company cafeteria and you say hi to, some guy from accounting.
Yeah.
It serves a certain purpose of interaction, but it's not a personal interaction the way it would be in a 5-person space.
Oh, yeah. We all knew each other and all of our problems. It was...
Yeah.
Thin walls, too,
Yes,
maybe?
yes. Old building, thin walls. Mm-hmm.
Which is another question. Is that something, when you're doing a multifamily project, how much time and effort is spent considering a certain level of privacy, a certain level of insulation? Has it increased?
I'm not quite sure how much it's increased, but we've always been very sensitive to that transfer side to side and top to bottom of sound. And those types of assemblies of the walls and the floors are really designed, at minimum to meet code requirements, plus maybe a little bit above and beyond if the developer is really like, this is a building, I'm going to own it for 30 years, I don't want any complaints, I really want to go to the nth degree to make sure people are really comfortable.
Yep.
So that has always been kind of always a standard, a gold standards, I guess you could say. But
Fair.
the privacy component, often the doors are offset in the corridors. So if you open your door, you won't be looking straight into somebody else's door. That happens in most instances. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. But again, I get a little visual privacy that you don't
Yep.
have to face one another just side to side,
Which
or
is-
just door to door.
Something.
Right.
Were you a Seinfeld fan, by the way? Just speaking
I was
of
a
privacy.
Seinfeld, yes.
Do you remember the reverse peephole?
I don't.
You don't
Oh,
remember the
man.
reverse? Kramer took his peephole and he turned it the other way around so that he could
So
look
people could
inside
see
to
in.
see if anyone was waiting to attack him.
It is kind of brilliant if you think about that.
It is. But, okay, so we talked a little bit about a change in function. Now, your role is design, so, not architecture per se, but obviously you're working hand in hand through that. What design changes, aside from additional functionality, are you seeing? Is there any kind of change in colors? Is there any kind of change in that aspect?
I think that, with the pandemic and people being quarantined, it was kind of difficult not to have this nesting quality to you. People were really focused. That's why, remodelers and everyone's like, I've been staring at these drapes for 4 years. I'm, just the idea to even get a contractor to make an update in your home was almost impossible because that's what people were focusing on. And so there was this kind of internal focus on your environment. And, there was the era of the gray on gray on gray. And that kind
Yes.
of went away. I mean, people...
But what's replaced it from that
I
perspective?
think it's a more... I hate to say the B word, brown, but let's call it cocoa, let's call it wheat, let's call it cinnamon. We can call it what you want, but...
It's brown.
We're seeing,
Warmer.
some of that warmth
Warmer.
come in,
Yep.
right. And those neutrals that were very chilly gray
Yep.
have turned a little bit warmer. And with that, still the brass, adding the copper, the matte black, but the chrome and the stainless steel. Even when it comes to the appliances, you might have a black stainless steel or something that's kind of more of a gunmetal color, but there's definitely those chilly tones have, I think, kind of subsided. And we're doing the best we can looking into the crystal ball, because it will take 3 years by the time I put a pencil to the paper to seeing it be installed. And that's kind of like, well, let's take a gamble. We'll roll the dice and see if it sticks 3 years later. And that's always the challenge, is try to be a little bit ahead of the curve instead of behind it.
Unquestionably.
But just those, the word biophilia gets thrown around all the time. So anything to do with nature, it's a little bit of an overkill word, but
it's legitimate.
It's legitimate. People want to have those natural elements, and so whether it's woven rattans and natural woods and handmade tile that looks kind of has a little imperfection, and not everything is so uniform and machined. So you have a little bit of that irregularity, but that irregularity in the product seems a little bit more familiar and a little bit more forgiving.
And authentic.
Right.
Through there. I have a theory on, tell me your thoughts on this. So, back in, let's say, the 70s, the fake brick wall. Everybody loved the fake brick wall. It was amazing. And in the 60s, of course, you had the faux wood on the end. In the 80s, there's always been this effort at creating some kind of duplication of natural experience. And it always fails within 5-6 years, because there's an inherent pattern in anything that is produced by man. There's just no way around it. And eventually your mind begins to pick that up. A fake brick wall might look real at first, but eventually your brain identifies the pattern in it. There's no way to identify it otherwise. So by using natural products, you're bypassing that entire concept. Does that seem true to you?
Well, I definitely am not a fan of faux brick. I definitely don't recommend.
Because I've always described you that way. Sarah Davis, faux brick.
I can't say I've ever used faux brick in any of my projects. But, I think that just the idea that it's a genuine product, and those kind of regular products can be foiled with something very minimalist, neat, tailored. But at least if there's just something within the composition that feels
original
or a little imperfect, I think that's been a big appeal. And not so, the true industrial look of kind of the downtown lofts. I think that's all softened a little bit. People, even if you have an exposed ductwork ceiling, you still want to have something that just feels a little warmer and a little bit more accommodating. And it's your home, even if it is a warehouse building.
Yep.
It has nothing. I mean, there is nothing that is. Well, I don't know if I was going to. I was going to say there's nothing that is universally, consistently worthwhile or beloved, right? Like the open warehouse, wood beam, lumber, exchange building type of thing it felt so natural and so organic and things. And now after a period of time, it's just not that same experience. That said, there are certain things that are eternal. Certain levels of finishing or experience that seem to transcend time. Do you agree with that? And if so, what do you think it might be?
Well, I feel like I'm on a job interview here.
I know, right? This is what happens when we freeform a show. Guys, if anyone is listening to this that can actually help us out, we are doing a different type of show today. Normally, we are in studio. We are doing the show by segments, and I'm very prepared. Here, what we're doing is a freeform 1-hour conversation that Johnson is going to break into pieces to fit the standard format. So if anybody would be kind enough to send me an email, Greg, G-R-E-G, at habitationdesign.com, to let me know what your thoughts are on this new format, I'd be grateful. Otherwise, I got to wait and see if I lose listeners, and by then it's too damn late because they can't come back. Hey, did I give you a little bit of time to think about your answer?
Well, I was just thinking maybe we should talk about more cocktails.
But there are certain things. I mean, and it generally has to do with balance and things. Like Greek. I mean, architecture, Roman architecture was all about balance and symmetry and things like that, and it has always remained popular.
You don't see houses being built like that, though.
Thank God.
You see people going to admire the existing, but you're not having anyone building a Grecian style Well, other than that crazy woman, the House of Versailles, whatever that woman is.
Like the house out by me in
Yeah.
Wayzata, Minnetonka that we referred to as the White Castle.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone that says, that's a timeless design, yeah, but it's going to go in and out of trends.
It's a word that's requested an awful lot.
Yeah, I want
really
something
want
timeless.
it to be timeless.
Well, okay, it's going to be great for 10 years, it's going to be bad for 30, and then it'll be great in another 10 years. Like,
Right.
that's timeless.
I mean, you can wait it out.
That's the thing.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. It's true.
I mean,
People-
look at clothing right now. 90s.
Yes.
Like mom jeans. And it's every 30 years, it just comes back.
Everything
Repeat.
generally does. Architecture as well. Hadley,
Like
you're
I
a
was
great...
saying with the cocktails and the sweetness, it seems like we stray away, and then we come back.
Like
It's
I've been
human
seeing
nature. That's the bottom line.
80s influence in design lately.
It has been with this almost a little bit of Memphis influence, a little kind of 80, how, Art Deco was a bit of an
Yep.
influence in the 80s, and now this kind of Deco is kind of coming back a little
Yeah.
bit. The terrazzo.
Yes,
has kinda come
terrazzos,
back.
yep.
Although someone was saying that's out already, so I guess maybe I can think about that.
I feel like the speed at which we're changing those trends has
Well-
increased with the speed of everything else these
In the
days.
Midwest, gets it,
A little later.
2-3 years later
Yeah.
after it originally comes out on either of the coasts.
Which
So-
is the beauty of living in the Midwest. You can literally predict the future. Just go to New York, go to Los Angeles,
Right, exactly.
and you know what's going to happen.
And it's difficult because obviously the developers are in competition with developments right down the street, and everyone is looking to differentiate themselves, make themselves a little bit more memorable on the walkthrough. It can be challenging to come up with something very different every single time.
Yeah.
You're doing the same amenities, the same. I mean, how many times can you redo a unit kitchen in
if you
in
try
an apartment to make it look different and fresh
Yeah,
and
yeah.
new? But you're still working with the same components, so that that's what kind of keeps me up at night. Is what do I do next?
It's because of the deadlines. Same with any artistry, you can create things on your own terms, but we all have deadlines.
Yeah.
You have
And
to speed up
budgets.
that
And
budgets.
budgets, yeah.
God damn
The
the
creative
budgets.
process is very much hindered by all those things.
Right. There's definitely parameters, and I think it's if I didn't have any parameters, it would be very difficult. But obviously, budget. Can we get it right now? Of course, supply chain issues can limit what we're able to do and get in a timely fashion. Or if something's just exorbitantly overpriced now, more than it used to be. I mean, everything we touch now costs more than it used to.
Yeah.
And our job isn't.
So you've got. Have you seen? I mean, are developers conscious of this still? Because for a period of time, I think one of the few nice things about COVID that came out. And there have been some nice things. I'm not going to lie to you, but
Tell me one.
people understand waiting better.
Yes, I agree. That
used
is a
to
very-
Certain
be
people. There's
a-
still people that just don't get it.
Of course, but people have now become familiar with what supply chain means. Nobody had thought about it before. If we said 3 years ago this sofa is going to take 12 weeks, people were bent out of shape. That's absurd. Now, 26 weeks,
Yeah.
they can understand everything
Yeah.
is backed up.
Yep.
So there's one good thing that came out.
That has been the one positive. If things are just when things are just out of our control, they understand now that it's really out of our control, and if
Indeed.
it's not going to arrive for another 12 weeks, then
They can get it.
They get it when they get it.
The other good thing that came out of COVID, by the way, is that people are generally day drinking.
Well, we're keeping that
More acceptable.
rolling.
Hey,
Welcome
the sun's
to my
going
world.
down. It's
The
all
sun
right.
is going down.
I know it's in the middle of
Wintertime,
the
you can
afternoon
drink a
and
little
it's dark.
earlier, right?
Agreed. So you brought up an interesting thing, though. Let me ask you, and this is a bit of a gear shift. If you could do the design of any project, any type of project outside of multifamily or what have you, what would you want to do?
My dream design project, you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny. People were saying, well, "Would you ever want to design your own home from scratch, and just from the foundation up?" I think that would be so intimidating because I know of so many options and possibilities. I think it would almost be paralyzing. To be honest with you, but back in the earlier portions of my career, I did more hospitality design, restaurants, bars, things like that, and I do miss a little bit of that. If I can incorporate a speakeasy into any of my projects, I do my best to do that. And we've done that.
You did.
We've done that.
Yep.
So that type of space that brings people together and relax and just pause a little bit, like, I'm going to have to come and see you, Hadley, at your bar, because it's just really, it's such a special place to be able to have people just kind of put their worries on pause for a little bit. And the lighting makes everyone look good.
I was going to ask, what do you think is the most important part? And it is. It's lighting, right?
And so those are the spaces I kind of miss designing, is those
the home
bars
away
and
from
lounges.
home places.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but you do get a chance to integrate some of that into kind of the common spaces and things, but it's still not quite the same.
It's not quite the same when the business model isn't focused on, that type of experience. I mean, it really is an experience, especially, we've all been in those lounges and bars, even when it comes to local, but especially when you're traveling and, you just need to re-energize a little bit and you find a little hole in the wall, little cocktail lounge, and there's a lovely bartender who is there to have wonderful conversation, and those are the types of spaces that I remember when I travel, and I just think those are kind of a little bit magical.
Which is so bizarre, though, because, again, talking about everything being cyclical, all of those were wiped away by the American infatuation with, uniformity. We don't want to go to Jimmy's Dinner House. We want to go to Perkins. And, now we're getting a chance to get back to that on more of an individual basis. Although it's really on kind of more of a mass produced basis, so I think I'm off on the wrong tangent, aren't I?
No.
Well,
I think a lot of those big chain companies you're seeing starting to go away, and you're seeing more boutique places like Farmer's Kitchen and Bar. And, we have an amazing restaurant scene.
In Minneapolis?
Local, yes.
Oh, yeah. Totally agreed.
I think people want a little more unique stuff.
It's interesting, though, like, for instance, Minneapolis St. Paul magazine just recently had their best of issue. Mm-hmm. And the editors will highlight these, like, wonderful places to eat, drink, explore. And you're like, these are just fabulous examples of creative entrepreneurs who, put together a wonderful business. And then you look at, like, the People's Choice, and it's a vast contrast. Yeah. And then I'm not saying it's quite Perkins, but it's pretty darn close.
Yeah.
When it comes to, like, favorite restaurant, you're like, really? That's
your favorite
restaurant? Even though there's just all these amazing places to try and sample. So I think, the editors are certainly on to something. And we just have to catch everybody up to that.
Minnesotans are really picky, too.
Yeah.
Like, we don't like to explore new foods. At least a lot of people I know growing up in Minnesota, there's a lot of... I just went out to dinner with somebody, and both of them, it was for a friend's birthday, and both of them had to research the menu before to know what they were going to get to see if there's anything on the menu that they would eat. And I was like, I've never done that in my life.
But it takes a certain personality type, and I know those types of personalities.
And they went with the baked
mac
and cheese.
A little,
and like I had the most amazing
mac and cheese.
Yeah, baked mac and cheese. That's what they went with. Out of like the sirloin steaks, and like I had the amazing what's the pasta that's made out of potatoes with
gnocchi.
Yeah, no, not that one. It's a different one.
Orzo?
No,
it's not gnocchi.
It's not gnocchi.
It's
spatula.
Yes.
Oh,
like
German.
You're talking about German.
Okay.
Yes.
And she's like, nope, baked macaroni, please. And I'm just like, okay, like you're 27, you're an adult, like you can expand your palate a little bit.
Not even any lobster in the mac and cheese to make it ground
There's-
up?
No.
There's
Okay,
a
that's
word
deeply
for
troubling.
that I discovered because I've previously just like working with a couple employees and just like trying to understand why, as a 25-year-old, you can only eat pizza,
Yeah.
mac and cheese,
Yeah.
and chicken tenders.
Yep.
And there's a
'Cause you're a
psychological
spoiled
word for it. It's
child.
called
What is it?
Food neophobia. The fear
New
of
food
trying.
fear.
Yeah.
Of new food.
And there's a good percentage of it, but I like to cater to the ones that are adventurous.
There
you
used
know,
to be a place in
to
Wayzata.
relate to those people.
Maybe you remember it. What was there was a place in Wayzata that prided itself on having an unusual special every Friday for the weekend, like alligator or something along those lines. And I remember I was there with my wife once, and I ordered the elk. The first bite of the elk was fabulous. The second bite of the elk was a little gamey. And the third bite of the elk was something that, frankly, I'm only eating if I couldn't hunt anything more tasty down. And Christina made the point. She said, I'm simply not going to eat anything that I'm not accustomed to eating at this point in my life. Your brain just doesn't do it. That's neophobia. Fair. I don't know. That said, the best gnocchi that you could find, or no, Spatzel.
Yep.
Is at the Black Forest Cafe.
Exactly what I was thinking. Right,
Yes.
I'm right there with you.
This was Arte and the Peacock Lounge in Northeast.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I like that
all
too.
right.
I had never been there. It was wonderful.
I haven't been to the Black Forest in a while, but
It's been a long time.
Was their baked mac and cheese good?
I didn't try it.
Oh. Maybe it was life changing.
Their pork belly or their pork cheek was amazing.
Guanciale?
Yes.
too funny. Well,
Nice.
all right. We are coming to the end of this particular program, and Sarah, I'm not going to forget to ask you to do a little bit of plug for you guys. Where do people learn more about your work?
Well, you can go to urban-works. Don't forget the dash or a
Urban-works.
hyphen. .com, urban-works.com.
What happens if you go to urbanworks.com? It's not a porn site, is it?
Not that that's right. No, but you never know. And it's kind of like we're kind of the Ron Meschbecher of multifamily, and my owners are going to hate that I say this.
They've never heard
we
of
kind
it.
of do one thing and we do it well. Do you remember those? Old
I do,
Meschbecher
yes.
commercials?
Specialization's important.
Yes, right. So you want to have it done right and on budget and on time, and have some creative fun with it.
You're the
Give
guys.
me a call. I'm happy to talk to you.
What's the most or soon to be newest opened project?
Oh boy, we've got a lot going on.
Do?
And keep in mind, we do everything from luxury to market to affordable and supportive. So one of my kind of
Supportive?
favorite projects I'm working on right now is in North Minneapolis for Beacon Housing and PPL, and it's for folks who are transferring right from homelessness into kind of their first stable housing. So we like to create places, safe, fun places for kids to grow up too. So we talk a lot about the fancy amenities and
Yeah.
the speakeasies behind the sliding door and
Yeah.
things like that. But there's certainly plenty of room for a good, clean, safe, functioning home for people who need it. And we do that as well.
Absolutely fabulous. Well, you're a great company. You do great work. It is a delight to have you back on the program.
Thank
and
you.
Congratulations on all the exciting things that happened during COVID.
Yes, well, yes, it was exciting, and let's just say I was happy to keep my job during COVID. So that was good.
Fair enough. All right. Well, there it is, my friends. We have drunk our way through yet another hour. On behalf of Habitation Design, the District Edina, and Urban Works, in addition to Farmers Kitchen and Bar, I'd like to wish everybody good luck this week, and I'm going to leave you with a quote off kind of the top of my head from John Locke. That which you fear is that which controls you. Good night, everybody.
La 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 la.